History often remembers its kings, but what about the queens who ruled with just as much power, ambition, and cunning? Today, we uncovering the stories of forgotten queens who didn't just wear a crown, they wielded it like a weapon, shaping empires and defying expectations. These aren't just tales of royalty, they are chronicles of power, strategy, and resilience. Let's journey back to the 15th century BCE to meet Hatshepsut, a pharaoh of Egypt. Not a queen consort, but a full-fledged pharaoh. After her husband's death, she was supposed to be regent for her young stepson, Thutmose III, but Hatshepsut had grander plans. She declared herself pharaoh, adopting the full royal regalia, including the traditional false beard. It wasn't about pretending to be a man, it was about claiming the symbols of power that were rightfully hers. For over 2 decades, she presided over a period of immense peace and prosperity. She wasn't a warrior queen, she was a builder queen. Her legacy is etched in stone at her magnificent mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri, a masterpiece of ancient architecture. She launched incredible trading expeditions, most famously to the land of Punt, bringing back immense wealth and exotic goods to Egypt. For years after her death, there was an attempt to erase her from history, chiseling her image from monuments. But you can't erase a legacy this powerful. Hatshepsut proved that a woman could rule Egypt just as effectively, if not more so, than any man before her. Now, let's travel to the 1st century AD to the kingdom of Kush in modern-day Sudan. Here we find Queen Amanirenas. When the mighty Roman Empire, led by Emperor Augustus, annexed neighboring Egypt and began demanding tribute from Kush, Amanirenas didn't bow. She responded with force, leading her armies herself. She launched a surprise attack on Roman territories, capturing 3 major cities and famously defacing statues of Emperor Augustus. She even took a bronze head from one of his statues back to her capital and reportedly buried it under the steps of a temple dedicated to victory so she and her people could symbolically tread on their enemy's head every day. The Romans retaliated, of course, but Amanirenas and her Kushite warriors fought back with such ferocity that the Romans, the supposed masters of the world, were forced to the negotiating table. The result, a peace treaty that was highly favorable to Kush. They didn't have to pay tribute and their borders were respected. Amanirenas, the one-eyed queen who lost her eye in battle, stared down the Roman Empire and won. A true warrior queen who protected her people and secured their independence against the greatest superpower of her time. Fast forward to the 10th century and the Viking Age, a world we associate with bearded raiders and longships. But in the heart of Kiev and Rus, a formidable woman named Olga of Kiev was about to carve her name into legend. After her husband, Igor of Kiev, was brutally murdered by a tribe known as the Drevlians for trying to collect excessive tribute, they had the audacity to send matchmakers to Olga, proposing she marry their prince. Olga's response was a masterclass in vengeance. She greeted the first group of envoys, had them carried in their boat into her courtyard, and then had them dropped into a trench and buried alive. She then sent word to the Drevlians that she required their best men to escort her to their prince. When this second delegation arrived, she invited them to bathe after their long journey. Once they were inside the bathhouse, she had the doors locked and the building set on fire. But she wasn't finished. She traveled to the Drevlian capital for her husband's funeral feast. After getting the Drevlians drunk, she ordered her soldiers to slaughter them. Thousands were killed. Her final act of revenge was a year-long siege of their main city. She tricked them into a false truce, asking only for 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from each house as a tribute of peace. That night, she had her soldiers tie smoldering embers to the birds' legs and release them. The birds flew back to their nests in the thatched roofs of the city, setting the entire place ablaze. Olga of Kiev was ruthless, yes, but she was also a brilliant administrator who later implemented the first legal and administrative reforms in her country and converted to Christianity, becoming a saint in the Eastern Orthodox Church. a woman of incredible complexity, both brutal and beatific. Let's leap to the 16th century to the Angolan kingdoms of Ndongo and Matamba. This is the era of Nzinga Mbandi, a queen who fought tirelessly against the Portuguese colonialists and the brutal slave trade. Nzinga was a brilliant diplomat and military strategist. Early in her life, she was sent to negotiate a peace treaty with the Portuguese governor. In a legendary display of power, the governor offered her no chair, expecting her to stand as a sign of inferiority. Instead, Nzinga ordered one of her servants to get on all fours, and she sat on his back as if on a throne, negotiating as an equal. For decades, she led a powerful resistance, forming alliances with other tribes and even the Dutch. She was a master of guerrilla warfare, leading her troops into battle well into her 60s. She moved her people, established a new capital, and created a commercial state that successfully rivaled the Portuguese slave routes. Nzinga was more than a warrior. She was a symbol of resistance, a brilliant political leader who dedicated her entire life to fighting for the freedom and survival of her people against the overwhelming force of European colonialism. Finally, we arrive in 19th century Madagascar to meet Ranavalona, often villainized in European accounts as a tyrant. Her story is far more complex. She came to power after the death of her husband and immediately reversed his policy of embracing European influence. Ranavalona was fiercely committed to Malagasy independence and cultural sovereignty. She expelled foreign missionaries, ended trade agreements with Britain and France that she saw as unfavorable, and prioritized self-sufficiency. Yes, her methods were harsh. Her use of the Tangina ordeal, a trial by poison to determine guilt or innocence, resulted in many deaths. But from her perspective, she was protecting her nation from cultural and economic imperialism that she saw destroying other nations. She built a standing army, industrialized her country with small-scale factories to produce goods locally, and successfully repelled a Franco-British naval attack. For 33 years, she kept European colonial powers at bay, preserving Madagascar's independence long after many other nations had fallen. Ranavalona was a nationalist leader who used every tool at her disposal to protect her kingdom's sovereignty in a world of growing colonial ambition. From Hatshepsut's architectural marvels to Amanirenas' defiance of Rome, from Olga's calculated revenge to Nzinga's lifelong resistance, and Ranavalona's fierce independence, these queens ruled with an authority and impact that rivals any king in the history books. Their stories have been marginalized, twisted, or forgotten, but they show us that power, leadership, and greatness have never been exclusive to one gender. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the past. If you enjoyed uncovering these hidden histories, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the stories that history forgot. Let me know in the comments which of these queens you found most fascinating. Until next time.